They owe me $3,147,800 today. That's the number the judge read out loud at 9:42 a.m., and you could have heard a pin drop in that courtroom of 96 families. The craziest part? It all started with a man in a $15,900 Rolex, fake authority badge, and an ego the size of my 47-acre inheritance telling me, "People like you don't understand how property works. We're taking over. Get used to it." He said that while standing on my land that's been in my family since 1967, land he had no legal right to touch. 2 months later, he filed a violation notice claiming I owed $11,200 in fines. 3 months after that, he threatened to bring the sheriff unless I signed his bogus agreement. Then he tried to smear me online, cost me my job, and even sent a PI after my kid. Every step, every dollar, every threat. I documented it. And when the truth finally came out, the judge quoted his own emails right back at him. His face turned white. Mine didn't move. Here's what I did. Look, my name's Derek Lawson. I'm 48 years old, divorced for 3 years, and both my kids, Emily, 21, and Ryan, 19, are in college up in Ohio. I'm an HVAC tech, been doing heating and cooling installs since I was 23. Nothing glamorous, nothing fancy, just long days, tight crawl spaces, burned knuckles, and trying to keep folks warm in January and cool in August. Pretty average guy. Nothing special except one thing. My grandfather, Samuel Lawson, born 1931, left me 47.3 acres of rural property just outside Oak Ridge. He bought it back on March 17, 1967 for $14,750, which he saved from 32 years working at the paper mill. He always said, "Derek, land's the one thing they can't make more of. Protect it." When he passed in 2018, he left it to me. The deed, the tax receipts, the survey maps, everything ended up in an old metal lockbox that still smells like cigar smoke. I didn't do much with the land at first. Between the divorce, my kids' tuition, and working 60-plus hours weeks, I only visited maybe twice a year. I'd walk the fence line, clear some brush, take pictures, promise myself I'd fix it up when life settled down. Life never settled down. And that empty space, that absence, it created the perfect opening for someone arrogant, connected, and greedy to slide right in. Someone who thought a man like me couldn't fight back. If this feels right, reply. I didn't realize how much that land meant to me until much later. Back in 2018, when my grandfather passed on October 12th, everything in my life was already cracking at the edges. My marriage had basically collapsed by then. Too many arguments, too much financial pressure, not enough time for anything except work. HVAC is steady, sure, but steady doesn't mean easy. Some months I brought home $4,800, others barely $3,200. And college wasn't cheap. Emily's first semester alone cost $12,940, and Ryan's books for freshman year were $614. So when the lawyer handed me that metal lockbox and said, "Your grandfather wanted you to have every document that matters," I honestly didn't grasp the weight of it. Not yet. Inside that box were the original 1967 deed, a 1978 updated survey, 5 years of tax receipts, a handwritten note from my grandfather with the line, "Keep this land. It'll protect you one day." At the time, I barely understood what he meant. I was too busy driving between job sites, mediating divorce papers, and figuring out how to keep the kids grounded while my life spun like a stripped screw. The property sat 14.7 miles outside town, a mix of old pine, a small field my grandfather used to plant corn in, a dried creek bed, and a rickety shed that leaned like it was exhausted. Nothing special to most folks, but it was ours. The antagonist, though I didn't know him yet, was already sniffing around the area then. His name was Brandon Kaiser. Age 52. Real estate developer. Net worth somewhere between $18 and $22 million, depending on who you asked. He drove a white 2021 Range Rover Autobiography worth about $112,000 and wore a $15,900 Rolex Submariner like it was a name tag. He had bought up several properties near mine between 2016 and 2019, building what he called affordable luxury communities. That phrase always gave me a headache. But folks liked him. City council liked him. Sheriff's department liked him. He donated $50,000 to the county high school football field renovation, and after that, he basically walked around like he owned the whole county. I didn't know any of this at the time. I was hardly paying attention. Between 2019 and 2022, I showed up at the property only 5 times. That's it. Once to clear brush, once to fix the lock on the gate, 3 times just to breathe and think. And while I was absent, Brandon made his move. In April 2021, he bought up 67.8 acres directly next to mine. In August 2021, he had architectural plans drawn for a planned development community of 96 family homes, each intended to sell between $289,000 and $347,000. That's nearly $31 million in projected sales. But there was one problem, a big one. His access road, the one he needed to connect the development to the county highway, cut directly across my land. He knew that. He also knew he didn't own it, but he assumed correctly that I wasn't checking the property much. And people like him, they operate on assumptions and shortcuts. My grandfather used to say, "A thief doesn't need your permission, just your absence." And I had been absent. Meanwhile, I was fighting a different battle. Work was brutal. We were understaffed. Between June 2021 and September 2022, I logged 187 overtime hours. My hands were so cracked from crawling under old houses that I kept a bottle of cheap lotion in the glove box, $4.79 a bottle, replaced every month. Divorce mediation drained me. Lawyer fees hit $6,800. And on top of that, I took on a second shift on Saturdays to help cover Emily's tuition jump to $13,550 for her junior year. Looking back, everything lined up perfectly for a man like Brandon to take advantage. His background? Real estate for decades. His father owned a construction firm. His uncle sat on the zoning commission from 1999 to 2014. Brandon grew up seeing land as chess pieces. I grew up seeing it as legacy. By early 2022, Brandon had crews surveying near my fence line. He had contractors talking about expansion. He even had a private meeting with 2 county officials on March 28, 2022, where he pitched his Phase 2 access corridor, which again cut through my land. He knew that. He also knew I wasn't around to stop him. The sympathy factors were piling up, though. I didn't see it then. I was exhausted, I was financially stretched, I was emotionally raw after the divorce. I was trying to support 2 college kids, and I trusted that no one would dare touch my grandfather's land. But greed doesn't care about grief. Irreverence doesn't care about legacy. And men like Brandon believe paperwork is optional if they're rich enough. So, when I finally drove out there in October 2022, just to get fresh air, I had no idea how drastically my life was about to shift. I wasn't expecting confrontation. I wasn't expecting construction equipment. I wasn't expecting an ego in a Rolex standing on my land like he owned it. I was expecting peace. What I found instead made my stomach drop hard enough to echo. And it triggered the fight of my life. If this matches your requirements, reply. I drove out there on October 22, 2022, a Saturday morning around 8:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because my truck clock always runs 6 minutes fast, and I'd mentally subtracted it when I turned onto Lawson Ridge Road, the little gravel path my grandfather named after himself in 1984. I just wanted quiet. That's it. A walk, some air, maybe clear a few fallen branches. But the moment I came around the bend, my stomach dropped so hard I actually said, "What the hell?" out loud. There were three things I saw immediately. 1. A bright yellow Kubota KX040-4 excavator parked halfway across my field. 2. Freshly cut stakes with neon orange caps marking a line that didn't belong there. 3. Tire tracks. Massive ones, running straight across my property like someone had been playing connect the dots on my inheritance. Then, I saw him, Brandon Kaiser, standing with two guys in matching polo shirts, holding a rolled-up set of construction plans like he was conducting an orchestra. I stepped out of my truck, heart pounding so loud I felt it in the back of my throat. "Hey," I shouted, "this is private property." Brandon didn't even turn right away. When he did, he gave me that tight, practiced smile wealthy men use when they don't see you as a human being. He said, word for word, "Relax, we're assessing future development. People like you don't understand how access easements work." That phrase, "people like you." My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "I'm the owner," I said. "There's no easement. There's no agreement. Get your equipment off my land." He laughed. Actually laughed. Then he shook his head and said, "You don't own what you think you own. We've already spoken with the county. This road is happening. You can cooperate or you can get steamrolled." One of his men smirked. The other didn't even look up from the plans. I pulled my phone out and started recording. My hands were shaking so badly the camera wobbled. Brandon saw it and shrugged. "Record whatever you want. My lawyers will handle you." Then he added, like a cherry on top, "The sheriff's department already knows we're here." A threat, clear as daylight. I left without another word. Got in my truck, heart racing, mouth dry, mind spinning. And as I drove away, something clicked. If he was confident enough to stand on my land and talk like that, he wasn't guessing. He was already in deep. And he expected me to roll over. He had no idea who my grandfather raised. When I got home that day, I didn't turn on the TV, didn't make coffee, didn't even take off my boots. I went straight to the hall closet, dragged out my grandfather's old metal lock box, and carried it to the kitchen table like it weighed 200 pounds. I sat there for a full minute with my hands pressed flat against the metal, trying to steady my breathing. My heart was still hammering from the confrontation. My jaw ached from how tightly I'd clenched it. Then, I opened the lockbox. Inside was every piece of proof my grandfather had safeguarded for over 50 years. I spread them out across the table until the surface disappeared under paperwork. The original deed, dated March 17, 1967. The 1978 resurvey with boundary markers clearly shown. 22 years of tax receipts. A 1994 letter from the county recorder confirming ownership. Photos from 1989 showing the exact fence line. A laminated 2006 aerial map with my grandfather's handwriting, "Our ridge line, don't let them push it." I dug deeper and found a folder labeled Legal, Important. Inside was the will, notarized on June 2, 2013, stating in black ink that I was the sole heir of the Lawson acreage. I organized everything into piles, deed, surveys, taxes, correspondence, while my phone played the video of Brandon again and again. Every time he said, "You don't own what you think you own," my fists tightened. I needed help.
This was bigger than a boundary dispute, and bigger than one rich guy talking down to me. This was organized, confident trespassing, calculated. So, the next morning, October 23rd, 2022, I met with a lawyer named Ruth Holloway. She wasn't cheap. Her retainer alone was $18,500, a gut punch I felt down to my bones. But she'd won 14 out of her last 16 property rights cases. And the receptionist whispered to me, "If you want someone who scares developers, she's it." Ruth shook my hand with a grip like steel and said, "Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single detail." So I did. I showed her the video. I showed her the documents. I told her Brandon's quotes word for word. Her expression didn't change until she mentioned the excavator on my land. Then her eyebrow twitched, slightly. For someone like Ruth, that was the equivalent of shouting. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and said the first of many lines I'd memorized during this fight. "Let them keep building." I blinked. What? Why? She pointed to my stacks of documents. Right now, they're committing misdemeanor trespass and civil encroachment. If they start construction without permits, without easements, without signed access agreements, that becomes major fraud. County fraud, state-level fraud, and if they use mail or email to coordinate, federal fraud. My stomach flipped. "So, you want them to dig deeper?" Ruth nodded. "The more they do, the more they owe you. The more they build, the harder they fall. Don't confront them again. Don't warn them. Document everything. Dates, equipment, workers, conversations, mail, everything." Then she said the line that carried me through the next 18 months. Paper trails don't lie, and arrogant men always leave them. I left her office with a folder labeled Case File 22481 and a knot in my stomach that felt half fear, half determination. Back at home, I bought a $129 trail camera, a $14 Ledger notebook, a 128GB micro SD card, and a $7.99 three-pack of pens. I wasn't just defending land anymore. I was preparing for war. A war fought with receipts.
Incident 1. Legal harassment. Cease and desist letter. Date: November 14th, 2022. Amount: $4,200. Threat of fines. 3 weeks after meeting Ruth, I got my first taste of Brandon's arrogance in writing. At 7:42 a.m., I opened my mailbox and found a thick white envelope stamped urgent, response required. Inside was a bogus cease and desist letter from Kaiser Community Authority, which, spoiler alert, was not a real entity. It accused me of interfering with an HOA-approved development corridor and demanded I pay $4,200 in assessment fees. My hands were literally shaking as I held the papers. I actually sat down on the porch steps to steady myself. The letter ended with the line dripping arrogance. Quote, "Failure to comply will result in enforcement action and potential property forfeiture." Property forfeiture. They were threatening to take my grandfather's land. I scanned the entire letter, front, back, envelope, stamps, and uploaded it to the digital evidence folder Ruth had told me to create. When I emailed her the scans, she replied within 11 minutes. "Perfect. This helps our case. Keep everything. Do not respond." I didn't know it yet, but this was just the warm-up. Incident 2. Fake code enforcement violations. Date: November 9th, 2022. Amount: $1,175. Fabricated fines. I came home from a 10-hour HVAC shift to find a bright orange sticker slapped on my door. Code violation. Unsafe structure. Fine. $1,175. My rental house. Not the land. My actual home. The officer listed on the notice? A man named Inspector R. Hale. Except that wasn't a real inspector. I checked. Twice. My stomach dropped. so hard it felt like a stone. I immediately took high-res photos, timestamped 6:18 p.m., then recorded a video walking through my house. Perfectly normal, perfectly safe. When I brought the sticker to Ruth the next morning, she didn't even blink. She said, "This is coordinated harassment, and it's excellent evidence." Her calm scared me more than the violation notice. Incident 3. Social media smear campaign. Date, January 17th, 2023. Impact amount, cost me $820 in lost overtime that month. A coworker pulled me aside at work. "Derek, dude, you need to see this." On Facebook, a page called Oak Ridge Community Watchdogs posted a photo of my property gate with the caption, "Local man blocking development that would help 96 families. Greedy, unstable, known troublemaker." The post had 417 shares within 24 hours. My chest tightened like someone was squeezing it with both hands. My boss saw it, my ex-wife saw it, my kids saw it. I screen recorded the entire page, screenshotted every comment, archived the post within 3 different tools. Ruth's response, "This is defamation tied to property action. It strengthens our damages. Keep monitoring." Every insult online felt personal, but every one was also evidence. Incident 4. Job attack. Administrative leave. Date, February 3rd, 2023. Amount, $1,950 lost wages. At 8:06 a.m., my boss called me into his office. "Derek, someone sent HR a complaint about you, claims you threatened a developer with violence." I felt the blood drain from my face. My legs went numb. I could barely breathe. HR placed me on administrative leave without pay. 2 weeks. That cost me $1,950. I spent that afternoon sitting in my truck, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I immediately asked for copies of the report. They wouldn't give me the name, it was anonymous, but I photographed the complaint document on my phone. Ruth read it and said, "They're escalating because they think intimidation will make you fold. Document everything. This is retaliation, and it's gold." I returned to work 2 weeks later, but the damage was done. Incident 5. PI following my kids. Date, March 11th, 2023. Amount, $312 spent on gas driving to investigate, plus emotional impact is priceless. Emily called me at 4:23 p.m., her voice trembling. "Dad, some guy was taking pictures of me outside the dorm." My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I felt sick. I drove 161 miles to her college that night. Campus security pulled footage. A man in a gray Chevy Cruze circling the parking lot, camera pointed at her. I took photos of the footage, saved the report, recorded Emily explaining what happened, only because Ruth told me to document everything. I hated recording her fear, but I did it. Ruth's reaction was the first time she looked genuinely angry. They crossed a line. This proves malicious intent. Keep the timeline tight. I hugged my daughter for a long time before leaving. That one hurt the most. Incident 6. IRS audit. Date, May 2nd, 2023. Amount, $8,000 accountant fees, plus 19 hours lost work. This one hit like a wrecking ball. At 10:17 a.m., an official IRS letter arrived. You have been selected for audit for tax years 2020 to 2022. Random? Not when you're fighting someone with money and connections. My stomach twisted into knots. I felt lightheaded. My hands were shaking too much to even open the second page for a minute. I hired a tax attorney and accountant, $8,000 up front. During the audit interview, one IRS rep quietly told me, "We received an anonymous tip with your name." I didn't need the name. I knew exactly who sent it. I scanned every page of the audit notice, uploaded everything. Ruth said, "This is a textbook intimidation attempt. It establishes a pattern. Keep going." I passed the audit clean, but the stress alone shaved a year off my life. Incident 7. Property vandalism. Date, July 19th, 2023.
Amount $3,480 damage plus truck and gate. I drove to the property after work and immediately saw it. My gate was cut open. My truck door was keyed from mirror to fender. Someone spray painted "Stop Fighting" in red on my storage shed. My jaw clenched so hard it popped. My hands were shaking with a mix of anger and fear. I photographed everything from 6 different angles, measured the cuts, saved the odometer reading to prove the timeline. I filed a police report, which the deputy didn't seem eager to take. Ruth told me they're panicking. When bullies panic, they make sloppy mistakes. This helps our case more than you realize. It felt like my grandfather's land was bleeding, and I couldn't stop it. Incident 8. Breaking and entering and threatening note. Date: September 4th, 2023. Amount $780 broken lock plus $250 trail cam replacement, which the actual legal impact was priceless. The most chilling moment of the entire ordeal happened on Labor Day. I got to the property at 7:52 a.m. The door to the old shed was wide open. The new lock, one I had installed just 4 weeks ago for $780, was smashed clean off. Inside, on top of a dusty workbench, was a single piece of paper. "This is your final warning. Stop." My throat got dry. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my gums. But then I saw it. My trail camera ripped down, lying broken in the dirt. Incredibly, the SD card survived. I took it home, popped it in my laptop, and there it was. A man in a dark hoodie breaking the lock. His watch glinting. Not a Rolex, but the same $800 Garmin smartwatch I'd seen on one of Brandon's site supervisors months earlier. I nearly dropped the laptop. Ruth's reaction when she saw the footage: she leaned back, smiled slowly, and said, "This alone could win the case." Then she added the line that still sticks with me. "We don't need to prove they're good criminals. We only need to prove they're bad ones." At this point, the timeline was bursting with evidence. 8 incidents, 10 months, over $20,000 in damages, multiple threats, multiple crimes, a clear pattern of harassment, intimidation, and fraud. And we were only halfway through the storm. But the moment that changed everything, the moment that turned this from a strong case into an absolute avalanche, was still coming. A single email, a single sentence, a single mistake. The smoking gun.
The confrontation didn't happen the way I imagined. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even planned. It happened because they got too comfortable. It began on January 11th, 2023, 7:42 a.m. I was heading out to check my trail cameras when I heard the sound again, the low metallic growl of heavy machinery. Not from the bordering field, not from the access road, from inside my property. I froze. That's when I saw it through the trees. A brand new cat bulldozer, bright yellow, rumbling deeper onto my land like it belonged there. My fists tightened around the straps of my backpack. Then I saw him, Brandon, standing beside the dozer, wearing reflective sunglasses and a smug smile, talking to 2 workers like he owned the world. He was pointing directly at my creek line, the same creek the deed referenced, the same creek his survey tried to erase. My blood burned. But I remembered Ruth's voice. "Do not warn them. Let their arrogance dig the hole." So I didn't march over yelling. I didn't call the sheriff. I didn't tell them to leave. I simply walked down the hill, quietly, calmly, filming everything. They noticed me when I was about 30 feet away. Brandon turned first, annoyance flashing across his face before he hid it under that fake corporate smile. "Morning, partner," he called. "Didn't expect you out this early." I didn't respond. I kept filming. He folded his arms. "You're documenting all this again? Come on, man. We went over this. This is a shared use zone."
I said nothing. One of the workers shifted uncomfortably. The dozer operator actually shut off the engine. Brandon tried again. You don't have to keep making this weird. We're on schedule and we're not hurting anything. You keep doing this lawyer stuff, you're just going to make trouble for yourself. That's when I spoke. But, unlike last time, my voice didn't shake. Is this part of the mutual encroachment you mentioned? He smirked. Look, I know you're confused about your actual boundaries. I interrupted. January 3rd email from Redwood Development. You CC'd 4 people. In it you wrote, "We have unrestricted construction access on the Lawson parcel. Proceed as planned." His sunglasses slipped slightly down his nose. The workers looked at him. I continued. You also attached a site plan labeling my land as Phase 2 expansion approved. But I checked with the county. Nothing has been approved. Nothing has even been submitted. Brandon's face lost a shade of color. He took a step forward. Where did you... I cut him off again. Did you know federal law considers email-based construction fraud a chargeable offense? Dead silence. Even the birds stopped. His jaw tightened. You're threatening me now? I shook my head. No, I'm documenting you. I turned the camera back on the bulldozer. Brandon snapped. Turn that off, he barked, stepping toward me. The 2 workers immediately moved between us, grabbing his arm. Boss, don't, one whispered. You can't touch him while he's filming. Brandon tried to keep his composure, but the crack in his calm was widening. He pointed at me, shaking with rage. You're making a mistake, a big one. I smiled for the first time in this whole ordeal. I know, I said, but the only mistake here is yours. And with that, I walked back up the hill, never turning my back, never stopping the recording, while behind me, Brandon yelled at his crew to pack it up. That video would later become Exhibit C, and the confrontation he thought he won, it was the moment he lost everything. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and nervous anticipation. It was October 16th, 2024, 9:03 a.m., and I could feel the weight of 96 families watching in the gallery. Their eyes were wide, some clutching papers, some whispering prayers. I counted. Every seat occupied, every heart tense. I was dressed in my usual work clothes, faded blue jeans, an old flannel, my 2006 F-150 cap, trying to look inconspicuous. Not that it mattered. Everyone knew this was a David versus Goliath story. Brandon Keyser entered last. The guy carried himself like he'd won before the first word was spoken. Rampant Rolex gleaming, white blazer, polished brown shoes. He nodded at his attorney with a smug smirk that could melt steel. The judge, 65-year-old Margaret L. Hawthorne, entered. 30 years on the bench. No nonsense, no flair. She scanned the courtroom with sharp eyes that felt like they could slice through lies. "Good morning," she said, voice carrying, measured, and heavy with authority. "We are here in the matter of Lawson versus Keyser developments. I expect facts. I expect truth. Let's begin." Ruth Holloway rose first. She carried a thick binder labeled Case File Number 22-481. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "Your Honor, we present unbroken documentation proving repeated trespass, harassment, and fraudulent activity by the defendant, Mr. Brandon Keyser. Our evidence includes 8 documented incidents spanning 14 months, totaling over $20,000 in direct damages and countless indirect impacts." She flipped to Exhibit C, the January 11th, 2023 video of Brandon directing a bulldozer onto my property. The room went silent. Even the stenographer paused. Ruth continued, showing emails, screenshots, photos of vandalism, IRS audit letters, and social media smears. She quoted Brandon verbatim. "People like you don't understand. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action. We have unrestricted construction access on the Lawson parcel." The gallery murmured, some gasping. Brandon's lawyer attempted to object. "Objection, Your Honor. The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap, sustained, but only for form. The content remains valid for factual review. Mr. Keyser, your conduct speaks louder than your objections." Brandon's smirk faltered. His fingers drummed nervously against the polished table. He was pale, almost ashen, as Ruth pulled up the internal email thread labeled, "Phase 2 access, Lawson parcel, proceed as planned. We know the land is not ours, but the county won't notice." The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Keyser, these are your words. You knew from the beginning." The courtroom was stunned. The 96 families collectively exhaled, some leaning forward, some wiping tears. Ruth smiled subtly. "Your Honor, as the defendant's own internal communication demonstrates premeditation and fraudulent intent, we request full restitution for property damages of $2.3 million, legal costs of $800,000, and referral to federal authorities for wire and mail fraud." Brandon's lawyer paled further. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Not a word came. The judge's gavel struck again. "This is one of the clearest examples of intentional property fraud I have seen in 30 years. Mr. Keyser, your actions are not just civil violations, they are criminal. I am issuing a preliminary ruling in favor of Mr. Lawson. Damages and referrals will follow immediately. Court is adjourned." The gallery erupted. People clapped softly, some gasping, some crying. I felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, but my jaw clenched with satisfaction. Ruth leaned over and whispered, "This is beautiful." I exhaled slowly, thinking of the trail cameras, the cease and desist letters, the IRS audit, the social media posts, the vandalism, every receipt, every note, every time-stamped photo. Every single thing mattered. Brandon's empire was crumbling before my eyes. His voice, which had once commanded confidence and fear, was now reduced to silent panic. And the best part, I hadn't raised a fist. I hadn't broken a single law. I'd just kept the receipts. All of them.